You know, for as iconic as Donkey Kong is in the world of gaming, it can sure take a while for him to actually get video games. In fact, he just went 11 straight years without a new game, since that was the gap between Tropical Freeze and the recently released Bananza. Because of that, however, the developers had the opportunity to pump this new game full of references to his older games. For example, did you know that almost every collectible fossil is just straight up an old friend or foe of TK? Of course, there are also a bunch of fun facts to find that aren't just references, and you best believe that in this video, I'm gonna cover all the ones I was able to find, as well as a ton of facts that were submitted by you guys via Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Here's a quick one that I noticed before the game even released. You know that song Breaking Through that they used to promote the game? Listen closely to the melody of this part.
Look at us, so big and small, two together through it all. Heart of gold, a wish come true. You and me, unbreakable.
That's actually the same melody as the opening to the original Donkey Kong. This game actually has a lot of theming based around music, considering Pauline powers you up by singing, which means Donkey Kong must be a big fan of music. And if you're also a big fan of music, you should consider picking up a pair of Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic. Yeah, that's the best sponsor segue I'm ever gonna pull off. Anyways, this video is sponsored by Raycon, and you know, this should count as a reference too, since they brought back their world famous everyday earbuds, except now it's as a new classic model, featuring active noise cancellation, which I love because it lets me drown out my neighbor's super loud 3-year-old daughter while I'm editing. And even though I literally don't have ears, these gel tips are super comfortable to wear for long periods of time, so I just want to recharging for my next elusive on-screen appearance. And since that can obviously take a long time, the very impressive 32-hour battery life these things pack are a real lifesaver. They obviously sound great, they're sweat resistant, and they of course come in a cool variety of colors. But who cares about that since one of the available colors is pink, so like, you know, get that one, obviously. Which you can do via my special link buyraycon.com/PJiggles to get 20% off the Everyday Earbuds Classics. You'll even be directly supporting the channel if you do. Big thanks again to Raycon for the support, and now let's get into some useless funny monkey game facts. Alright, since we were just talking about the song Breaking Free, here's a fact I got submitted a bunch of times. Usually whenever you hold L to whistle, Pauline's humming doesn't really reference any existing song in particular. It's always just some random tune. But after you beat the game, one of the random songs she can hum will actually be Breaking Through.
When it all seems so dark and bleak,
making it the only existing song she can hum. And speaking of whistling, Fish2Right told me that if you do so while standing still on the hilltop layer, a flock of birds will eventually start gathering around you. You can do this for a decent amount of time until you're practically surrounded by birds, then they'll stop spawning. This isn't exclusive to the hilltop layer, however, as it also happens on the resort layer, though from my testing it does seem to be exclusive to those two levels. By the way, if you look closely at those birds, you can see that they have some crystals on their chest that looks like a bow tie, some near their rear that looks like a tail, and even their beaks appear to be made out of crystal. All of the little critters in this game have crystal parts like this actually. The moles that dig around in the mud have claws made of crystal, the lizards from the canyon layer have big crystals on their backs, and the squirrels from the forest layer have crystal linings on their tail, as well as a crystal acorn that they're holding onto. Here's a quick useful fact about the whistling, by the way. You don't actually have to wait for the void tape to disappear completely. You can just punch it away at any point as long as you're whistling. I know that kinda goes against the spirit of this video, but I learned this pretty late into my playthrough, and it does save a lot of time in the long run, so I thought I'd share it anyways for those that didn't know yet. Anyway, speaking of making music, Pauline actually performs the vocals of the Bananza songs in real time. So if you interrupt her by, for example, spinning around or making her hum, the vocals will disappear from the music and come back when you stop. On the opposite end, if you try humming while she's in the middle of a sentence, such as after waking up, you won't hear the humming until she's done talking, though its effect of showing you where to go still works like normal.
Refreshed and
and ready to go.
Also, whenever you make her hum, she does so during her regular sitting pose, and she also just does it while running on DK if he's spinning. But strangely, if you spin near void tape and then hum to remove it, she assumes her sitting down position as if DK isn't spinning, which looks kinda wonky and feels like an oversight. Okay, last fact about music. There are a bunch of Fractone NPCs that are just kinda vibing out, doing a little dance, and if you activate a Bananza near them, they will actually dance faster to match the BPM of the Bananza theme. And they'll go even faster to match songs with a higher BPM, such as the Ostrich theme. Alright, let's move on. Here's a fun detail near the start of the game that Is It Gex Knight told me about. After you free Pauline from the Odd Rock curse in the Lagoon layer, you get a little cutscene of Poppy Kong spying on you and spouting some exposition, and then she leaves. But if you go to where she is before freeing Pauline and seeing that cutscene, she'll actually be there, and Pauline will even chime in with a line warning DK about her. Also, if you try to high-five her here, you can see that DK actually goes for it, since he does open his hand for it, instead of keeping it a fist. I know you can always high-five her whenever you encounter her, even before beating her in a fight once, but it's funny here considering DK doesn't even know her at this point yet, and Pauline literally just warned him about her. Here's a quick fact that's kinda hard to encounter. Whenever you die, there's a small chance for a golden DK statue of him in pain to spawn where you died. Yeah, that's about it. I figured this out near the end of my casual playthrough, because I died like 5 times trying to get this stupid ass fossil in the feast layer. Seriously, this is the worst fossil in the game. And hey, that brings me to one of the biggest facts in this video, the fossils. The ones in the first couple layers are mostly based on real life fossils, like the Ammonite, Leaf, Sea Lily, and Trilobite to name a few. However, the majority of fossils in this game afterwards are actually directly based on past characters from the Donkey Kong series. Going in order of when you encounter them, the Preserved Bug is based on the Zinger enemies from the original Donkey Kong Country. Both Beaver fossils are based on the Naughty enemies, specifically on this absolutely hilarious render of them. The Pig fossil is based on Professor Chops from Donkey Kong Country Returns, who acted as the tutorial character and checkpoints in that game. The Spider fossil is based on Squitter, the animal buddy from TKC2, Diddy's Conquest, which let you create web platforms to stand on. The Frog fossils are based on Winky, the animal buddy from DKC1, who of course lets you jump really high. The Anglerfish fossil is based on Glimmer from DKC2, who lit up the dark underwater levels so you could see ahead of you. The Swordfish fossil is based on Engard, the swordfish, who you could ride and dash forwards in some underwater levels. The Banana Bird fossil is of course based on the Banana Birds from DKC3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, who actually just function as collectibles, which funnily enough makes this game the second time they fill that specific role. The Armadillo fossil is based on the enemies called Army, which are of course armadillos. The Sea Urchin fossil is based on the Lurchin enemies from DKC3, who acted more like obstacles rather than enemies. The remaining 6 fossils are a bit more interesting than the others, and they're from the last few layers in the game. So if you don't want to be spoiled on them, I suggest leaving the video now. There's your warning, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the Old Tire fossil is just based on a car tire, which have appeared a few times in the series, most commonly as an object you can bounce on. The Cathode Ray Tube fossil is literally just a CRT TV, which is probably a callback to Donkey Kong very often having one in his treehouse throughout the series, even in 2 separate Smash Ultimate character reveal trailers. The Robot fossil is based on Chaos, who was a boss in DKC3. Something really interesting about this fossil is that in its description, it says that it was created by a maverick scientist using his wife's pots and pans, which is a reference to how after the second time you beat him in DKC3, King K. Rool pops in and says, "Oh no, what have you done? My wife's going to kill me. I used all her best pots and pans to make him." Yeah, in case you didn't know, King K. Rool is canonically a married man. I don't know how he managed to bag anyone, but good for you, man. Moving on to the last few fossils, the remaining 3 are incredibly on-the-nose references to stuff from the original Donkey Kong game. The 8-bit barrel fossil is based on the barrels you have to avoid. The 8-bit items fossil is based on Pauline's lost items, which you could collect for points. And the 8-bit DK fossil is based on Donkey Kong from that game. Which, I don't even know how that makes any sense. Like, isn't that Cranky Kong? Did he die and fossilize? What the hell? Also, before we move on, I quickly want to mention 2 more fossils, namely the T-Rex and the Triceratops. These are obviously based on real-life dinosaurs and not on an existing DK character, But it's worth pointing out that in Super Mario Odyssey, you can take control of a T-Rex, and at the top of Fossil Falls, there's a giant Triceratops skull you can stand on. This probably isn't meant to be a reference, considering these are just real dinosaurs, but maybe it could be a quick nod to Odyssey, since this was made by the same dev team. Anyways, the rest of the facts in this video cover like the biggest spoiler in the game, and even more beyond that. So if you don't want to see what are, again, the biggest spoilers in the game, I suggest you stop watching the video now, and I thank you for watching this far. There's your final warning, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now that the coast is clear, what the f***, King K. Rool? Holy shit, New Donk City, Lanky Kong is alive? Told you that'd be spoilers. Yeah, so King K. Rool is in this game, with a big final showdown in New Donk City. But before that, you have a cool showdown with him while you're on a small Banandian platform digging through the earth. Remember Chaos, that DKC3 boss I mentioned earlier? Well, the hypist let me know that King K. Rool's new propeller backpack in this game looks a lot like Chaos. Maybe he built it out of his remains, which would be kinda weird considering he's a fossil now, but I digress. Anyways, after that, King K. Rool just basically destroys New Donk City, and you have to catch up to him in a final platforming gauntlet. And during this segment, there are a ton of billboards and such that reference older characters, concepts, and whatever from the Donkey Kong series, and of course, I'm gonna cover all of them. The various Lanky ads all of course reference Lanky Kong from Donkey Kong 64, even including his famous DK rap bit.
He has no style, he has no grace. This Kong has a funny face.
Similarly, the Tiny Bank ads reference Tiny Kong from DK64, and Joe Does Draw told me that the fact that she seemingly owns a bank now could be a reference to how, according to the old official Donkey Kong 64 website, she's a tax official. Like, what the hell? I knew about this, but didn't make that connection at all, because I guess I forgot about it. But oh my god, if that's intentional, then that's an insane deep cut. Well done, Bananza divs. Anyways, moving on, the Candy Music ads reference Candy Kong, along with her bow tie. Funky Flights references Funky Kong and his fast travel service from Donkey Kong Country, and it even has his signature barrel plane on it. Cranky Records obviously references Cranky Kong, and specifically the opening of the original Donkey Kong Country, where he's playing a record on his old record player before Donkey Kong comes down to knock him away. Engard Eatery references Engard the swordfish from Country, but I don't think him having an eatery is for any specific reason, other than him being an edible fish, I guess. Flap to It references Espresso the ostrich animal buddy, specifically the shoes he wears. And maybe this is just me, but I feel like the Flap to It slogan is a sly reference to the real-life shoe brand Nike's famous Just Do It slogan. Cause, you know, shoes. Lady and the Kong, A New Donk Story, is definitely a reference to Disney's Lady and the Tramp. But it also doubles as a reference to Lady, which was how Pauline was often called in the original Donkey Kong. 94.0 KNDC Radio, Just the Hits, might seem like a generic radio station at first, but the 94.0 likely references the year that Donkey Kong Country released, which was in 1994. Treehouse Bagels is just a simple reference to Donkey Kong's Treehouse that has appeared in many DK games. Donk Roast Coffee Jungle Beat Cafe is likely just a reference to the game Donkey Kong Jungle Beat's title. Jungle Japes and Sticker Brush Symphony performing live at City Hall both obviously reference the titles of two very famous Donkey Kong Country songs, and the performing live at City Hall part probably references that in Super Mario Odyssey, there's a band performing at City Hall, setting the precedence that happens there occasionally. Similarly, NDC Big Band live at City Hall likely references this same band from Mario Odyssey, and NDC Festival is probably a direct reference to the iconic festival segment from that game, which is really cool. Aside from these reference ads, there are also a ton of King K. Rool inspired things, since he's taking over the city. Most of these don't really seem to reference anything directly, but I feel like the various signs saying King K. Rool is back could be a reference to his very long absence from the series as a whole, since he was gone from the mainline games for 18 years. There are also a lot of neon signs and such here featuring a boxing glove, which is likely a reference to his final boss fight in Donkey Kong 64, which was of course set up as a boxing match, which itself is also referenced here, since the final showdown with K. Rool is again in a boxing arena. I also spotted this warning sign saying Kremling's ahead, with some pretty low resolution text under it, but I'm pretty sure it says Kongs should prepare for a humiliating defeat. There are even more ads around the city here that I didn't talk about, but they don't really feel like references, just generic things you'd see in a city like New York, which New Donk City is obviously based on. These include Ice Age Alley, NDT The New Donk Times, Canopy Capital International, We Heart NDC, Welcome to NDC, City Litigator Public Law, and New Donk Mining Corporation. That said, there are 3 more that could be a reference if I reach a bit though, such as Tropic TV Plus, which feels like it could be a reference to how many of those dumb media streaming subscription models have a plus in their name, like Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, Paramount Plus, Apple TV Plus, and AMC Plus to name a few. D&K New Donk Style feels like a reference to the real-life clothing brand H&M, kind of a simple one. And lastly, Dynasty Parking is a weird one, because it depicts a crown and feels too specific to not be a reference to anything, but I really can't put my finger on what it would be. I thought maybe it could be a reference to Princess Peach or royal figures in the Mario series in general, but there were no other references to Mario things here besides stuff from Odyssey of course, so I'm really not sure. If you know what this could be pointing to, feel free to let me know. Anyway, speaking of this segment, you have infinite Bananza meter for the fight, and you're intended to mostly use the Kong transformation for combat, and when you land the final hit on K. Rool, the little scene of you and Pauline punching him into the stratosphere naturally depicts DK in his Kong Bananza form. However, Lucas64 let me know that this scene actually changes depending on which form you were in when you landed the final hit. So if you were, for example, in the Snake form for whatever reason, this shot will have you be in that transformation instead. This makes sense of course, but I'm sure not many would ever see these, as there's no real reason to use anything other than the Kong transformation when attacking K. Rool. Anyways, here are all the variations of this scene. There's of course also a version of this shot with DK in his regular form. And Toast3325 let me know that there's even a unique scene for when you land the final blow by throwing a chunk at him, which skips the first part and doesn't show DK and Pauline at all. I'm willing to bet very few people have seen that one. Alright, now let's end on what was probably the most commonly submitted fact. Usually when you beat the game and after the credits have rolled, you get some text on screen that says 3 months later, and then you get the scene of DK arriving at Ingot Isle for the second time, setting off the post-game adventure. However, if you manage to skip obtaining any of the Bananza transformations, for example the Zebra one, which you can do with a strat using the Ostrich form in the Junction to skip all of the freezer layer, then you'll get this very obscure scene after the credits.
Hey DK, I've been thinking. I'm pretty sure there are some Bananza powers we still need to learn. Let's go see the elders and make sure we learn all the Bananzas.
This then puts you in the same post-game Ingot Isle opening again, as you probably expected, and after reuniting with Pauline, you'll have all the Bananza forms, even the ones you initially skipped. I think it's really cool they included this. Feels like something they do to benefit speedrunners specifically, which is awesome. And it's also expected from the same team that had little interactions for doing big skips in Super Mario Odyssey. Oh, and if you're wondering what happens if you go and visit the elders you skipped after beating the game, you'll of course have to make your way there again as if it's your first time there, and when you actually make it to the elder, they'll basically act as if you've already met them before, and you can just start the post-game rehearsals quest from there. Kinda underwhelming, but also expected. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today. I actually have way more facts left that I didn't use than expected, so I'll probably make a part 2 to this video eventually, meaning I could always use more useless facts, so be sure to tell me if any you might have, and it could be included next time. Anyways, big shoutouts to new members Luca Bazooka 2004 and Transmagnet, thank you so much, Quote is Cool, Zelda Fan 643, CPJ, The Flying Fire, LurFX1, Giant Fire and Coal, Exobear, Daniel, Sheen for the Win, Lime the Chef, Goomba Odyssey, and the rest of my amazing Patreon supporters. This channel would not be possible without your support. And shoutouts to you as well for watching. My next video is actually going to be extremely soon after this one, and about a game I know most of you like. So be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to catch it as it goes live. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.